Welcome everyone here and online. We have about same number of people online somewhere, I believe. Welcome to our Industry of the Future working group. I'm Bruno. I coordinate this working group already for many years. With the group, we aim to gather industrial managers around topics of interest, like today. So the topic today is digital innovation and threats. Handle your international industrial cybersecurity. The background to this topic is, of course, it's the fact that digital innovations has become prevalent in the industry, and that maybe has increased over the past 1 year, as well as we see increasing cybersecurity threats, and of course I think the so-called new China cybersecurity laws, not that new anymore, still a hot topic. So it is a hot topic, I believe, which in our opinion is seldom discussed specifically for the industry. So that's what we will try to do. So I'm pleased to host today our two speakers. We have Clémence Laguette, who's the Digital Transformation Manager and Chief Data Officer at ENGIE China, ENGIE, the big utility company. And we have Maxime Oliva, who's the CEO, founder of TechID, a cybersecurity expertise firm. They will talk a bit more about their business. So they will do this presentation together and share with us, and they will answer our questions. So it's interesting for us to have someone from the industry, Clémence. We have someone who is a cybersecurity expert, Maxime. I'm not going to speak today, but somehow I initiated this because I'm an IT, a digital solution supplier. You know, I don't coordinate this group full time. I have a real job. We're dealing with, most of you know us, Civico, we're dealing with maintenance 4.0 solutions or smart O&M solutions. So maintenance management software for the industry. And we see, and that's how the idea from the group started, actually for this session started, is we see that we think that the awareness of cybersecurity among our customer base and generally in the industry is not that strong. In spite of all the seminars by lawyers and so on the topic, in spite of the cybersecurity laws in China and all the noise around this. And we did very recently a customer survey at the end of last year. We just published a report for our customer base, and it turns out that 35% of my customers, which are big industrial companies, factories, infrastructures, so quite advanced, fairly advanced companies, if they work with us. 35% of them have actually taken action with regards to the cybersecurity law. That was the question. The question we asked in the survey was related to the cybersecurity law, not cybersecurity in general. Only 35%, and another 15% or so are going to do something. So that leaves, a bit more than half that have not done anything and are not planning to, which for me is a bit scary, because if it's the law applies to everyone, and cybersecurity threats exist for everyone. So that's how actually for me the idea of this theme came up, and that's why I contacted Maxime and then Clémence to talk about this. It's a hot topic, but we believe it is not yet properly covered. That's it for my introduction. So we are a small group today, so I think during the presentation we can also ask questions, and in the end there will be time for Q&A. For those of us who are remote, Q&A will be a little bit more difficult perhaps, but don't. You can. I think you can raise questions in the chat somewhere, and we should be able to see them. And that's all for me. So welcome, Clémence and Maxime.
So today we are going to talk about the cybersecurity in the industrial environment. I took very briefly a quote from the founder and chairman of the World Economic Forum. It's very relevant because I think for my industrial manufacturing industry, if you talk about the fourth industrial revolution, and basically the way Klaus Schwab defined it is like this vision for developing, and governing the technology. So basically it is a technology-based revolution. But what does technology-based revolution mean for the industrial system? That's basically what we are going to address today, and what are the risks that can
So today, a quick review on the agenda. So Bruno already introduced us, so I'm not gonna go again. Maybe just a question you are asking yourself is why, as I'm in charge of digital and data, I'm addressing cybersecurity topic, but because actually I'm in charge of data, and from that, trying to get data valuation, we identify some holes, if I may say, in our processes, and so I had to tackle this topic with the cybersecurity officer of the company. But so quickly, we will introduce our companies, and before addressing more the global context about cybersecurity and the impact on digital transformations, and then we will dive in. So introducing the use case and what we did together at NG with Tech ID support, and before providing you with a quick memo card for you to go back home with clear idea about what we mentioned today. Indeed, we plan for some question and answer at the end, but don't hesitate to raise your hands and interrupt if you have any question during the presentations. It can be really interactive, and it's going to be good. Thank you.
So Tech ID is there is one thing that is important to remember is we have three exercise which makes us unique. So around security, operations, and legal, which help us to have a vision of cybersecurity.
And so for those who don't know NG is a renewable companies. Headquarters is in France, but we're operating business in 5 continents. I will not go into details about NG globally because we're doing many things. What NG is doing in China, though, we're like focusing on renewables energy, especially distributed solar. We'll explain a bit later what it means, and green mobility. So doing smart charger for electric vehicles, and also doing district cooling and heating networks, which address more smart cities. So yeah, very quickly for you to have an understanding.
All right. So let's go to the question. So how do you start with cybersecurity? Before we quickly review that graphic, just how many of you here are in the network? Okay. Anyhow, when we are talking about the industry 4.0, okay, that is a main topic which can come regularly. Okay, so of course, smart sensors, 3D printings, IoT platforms, mobile devices, and so on. But what is very important to understand in this infographics is all this is not low technology. Okay? It's very advanced technology. It's not something that you can put on a computer. And the point of this is basically to say that if you want to perform such activity on the plan, on the campaign side, etc., this is not just by putting a server on your desk. This is really the power, computing power to do such kind of things, and this happens with data centers. So which means somehow you have to connect your industrial site to a data center. And that is not something that happened before, because industrial systems used to be able to protect the assets and the system managing the industrial site. So, because IT guys are very good for all these kind of things, we have what we like to call a plug and play solution for most everything. So basically, you are going to come, you're going to see a vendor, and you're going to ask for something, and he's going to tell you, I have a plug and play solution. Very convenient, very easy, right? It's working. That's right. It's not a problem by itself, but then it means there is probably some connections which are going to be open with some new technology that you may not truly evaluate in terms of security. And that may create risk for you. So, I want to say that every type of solution you have a risk somehow. It's not, you cannot protect yourself. You can, of course, but it's just that people should have this environment before new systems and new technology. So this is the real risk that we are facing in the new 4.0 revolution. All right. So when that is said, what is the risk? Actually, okay, I open the door, I open the system, I open the somehow. What can be the risk we are facing? So this is a study from PwC's 2020. I have highlighted some facts. So here are the top three product crime faced by industry, and you can see that basically cybercrime is everywhere. If we take just a few minutes to explain what is a cybercrime, a cybercrime is any type of crime that you can have in real life, conducted through internet or computer systems. Okay, so basically, blackmail is a crime. Blackmail by banging someone on the internet is a cybercrime. So this is what cybercrime is. And it is not to be mistaken with cyber attacks. There is a slight difference you have to understand here. All cyber attacks are cybercrime, but not all cybercrime use cyber attacks. Okay? Basically, if I set up a legal account and I blackmail someone, I do not hack into something. However, if I hack into something, just like the type of hacking, so when we look at energy, you can see there is no cybercrime. If you look at industrial and manufacturing, you can see that it's top two product crime, it's cybercrime. And I also highlighted technology because in Industry 4.0, I mentioned it's all about technology, right? So those cybercrime are to be additionally put from your own possibility of cybercrime for a very simple reason. You may be hacked, but your technology supplier is not, and therefore creating an additional liability. So let's say, just for the fun, that basically there's 35% risk of cybercrime for industrial products and manufacturing. Here in energy, utilities, and resources, you can see there is no cybercrime. Yet you still rely on technologies, so you can consider that 20%. But you have also some very interesting things, I would say, like the asset misappropriation, which we will discuss a bit in the case studies. Even though it is not purely misappropriation of assets, there is here some very interesting that risk you are facing to cybersecurity. And there is an additional risk which is not appearing here somehow, which is very important, and Bruno mentioned, is actually the compliance of cybersecurity. Not only in China, but globally, there is a huge amount of regulations which are being implemented all over the world, but more focusing on China, because in China there is a China cybersecurity law which is not new, but is in constant evolution and more specifically implementation. And that's basically the example that we use for this.
Thank you, Maxime. Sorry. Let's dig in though. So this looks really simple, right? It's like solar panels on a rooftop. So it's what we call distributed PV, which means solar panels on a rooftop. Opposite to centralized PV. So PV stands for photovoltaic. Centralized PV is something that you can find outside of cities, like big power plants. Distributed PV is something that we set up on rooftop. So it's really close to our customers, close to the consumption sites, okay? So our use case today is focusing on distributed PV. And so when you see that, you're just like, where is the technology here? And where is the cybersecurity threat over there, right? And so actually, even for things that look that simple, you have a cybersecurity threat. And also what is adding up of the complexity for this project is the governance. So what happened is, like in 2019, ENGIE bought 100% of solar assets, and ownership was 100%, okay? So you can think that we have the full responsibilities, but actually it was bought by ENGIE France, and ENGIE China was actually having the contract with the operators here. So which means that we are not operating, we are not doing the operation and maintenance of our assets, we are delegating it to someone by a contract, right? And this contract is handled by ENGIE China. So already you have some complexity. Who is handling what? What are the roles and responsibilities? And who knows actually what is happening on these assets? So something really cool is, like, as we were owning 100% of the assets, we could actually have a perimeter really well defined, and to go into this this cybersecurity review. But we didn't start there. So one thing we noticed is actually most of the time we don't really know what are the threats and what are the issues regarding cybersecurity, because it can happen at so many levels. And as I mentioned, it can be like some governance. Here in China, when you're doing business, most of the time you need to cooperate with the local companies, right? So you have a local partners, or you're setting up a joint ventures. And when you're setting up a joint venture, most of the time you are a minority shareholders. So in our case, we didn't use a joint venture, but we use an operator. And this operator has other clients, right? So it means that when you're trying to have the operator to change his processes, you also need to deal with so many things. And also it's a Chinese operator, so it's even adding more complexity. So the project was, which means that you can't decide, okay, we identify a cybersecurity threat, or we want to run an audit or change something, and you just go. And because actually you need to deal with your partners. So this is what actually made us to think that we could use external help and from experts like Stake ID. Another thing is actually to identify cybersecurity issues is, like, we didn't start with cybersecurity. What happened is, like, we wanted to do data evaluation, which means that we have data sets and we want to create value. So which means that for us, in our case, would be so to have a better knowledge of the energy production, energy consumptions, maintenance, do predictive maintenance, right? So to do that, we need to understand the data sets and create value from that. So we started from there, not at all from cybersecurity. And to do data evaluation and to have clean data sets, we decided to do a data inventory. Why? Because a data inventory is like you have all the data sets identifying, so identify in the same file, so that everybody has access to the same information. And what you do when you do a data inventory as well is, like, you try to understand the processes of the data sets, which means that what is generating the data? Who is collecting the data? Where is it stored, right? And so we said, like, okay, let's have a clear. And also, what we wanted is to, because we are a worldwide group, we wanted to transfer data abroad. And we are talking about energy data, which is really sensitive, right? So also doing a data inventory, what we were aiming for is to understand the sensitivities of the data sets. And we started to do the data inventory. And then you're like, oh, interesting. Actually, we missed something. When we bought the assets in 2019, we forgot something. We forgot to do a cybersecurity audit. Oh, too bad. So which means that we don't really understand who has the responsibility of the data. What exactly is the data over there? Are there any threats over there? So what we say is like, okay, let's stop the data inventory there and let's start to do an audit to understand better like the processes, right? So who is owning that, how we are collecting the data, and is there any threats related to that? So we call Tech ID saying, you are the experts, and as we have different partners engaged, we need somebody external and also with specific competencies, because what happened as well is that ENGIE has a really strong cybersecurity at the group level, right? Because we are producing energy and it's really sensitive everywhere. And so we thought that because we are really compliant with GDPR and also with CSL, we were good to go. But actually, as I mentioned before, as project was operated, signed with ENGIE France, as ENGIE China was doing the operation with a local operator, then you lose track of what is happening. So this was a bit of complexity. One thing also to identify the issues is that actually it does not come only from maybe C-level or from the IT department. You need to have everybody engaged, because something that Maxime mentioned is that now with Industry 4.0, everybody got like in digital transformation, we are pushing and promoting people to try out some solution, right? So, and you have many things available on like on the market. It's really easy. He talked about plug and play. So actually you are a marketing department and you meet somebody, it's just like, oh, you have a solution, it's really cool. And it's really easy. I'm coming and I plug and play, right? And you can use it. And so now what is happening, because we're talking about being agile and being quick and having a short time to market to be competitive, people, they think that reaching out to IT department or digital department is a loss of time, right? And so you have a lot of what we call shadow IT happening. So it means that many projects are being done without being identified by the IT and digital department, so which create even more threat. So in this context, we said like, okay, let's go back to something really specific and having management involved and operation. When we identified we had this gap, for sure, we discussed with the steering committee of ENGIE China in explaining what was going on. And they're just like, they know it's an important topic. They understand really well the Chinese cybersecurity law. No, nobody understands really well that, but they know it exists, right? And they're just like, okay, but it's solar assets, right? It's what they can do with that. Why they want to hack distributed solar PV? And so this was interesting to say, actually, you can do many things. You can cut off the productions, or you can increase a lot and create not an outbreak, but like overpowered and then shortage for the consumers on many things. Also because you are connected to the grid, and the grid is state-owned, right? So in China, you don't want to mess with the grid. So it was also to convince about top management, explaining what is ongoing and what are the risks, and then to work with operations from ENGIE, who are like on the field collecting the data and for many things, for billing and so on, and cooperating with our operators. So it was a lot of people to engage, and one thing was key is to have an external partner to actually say, okay, how we are going to get organized, and also that it doesn't feel that we are kind of threatening our partners. The point was to say we want to improve our asset management, and by improving ourselves, you will also improve the way you operate your system. Yeah.
Just one situation which looks a bit more likely to happen as well, change the number of hours or rotation of the machines to engage in a preemptive renewal of system, etc. This is directly made for everyone. So yes, of course, we can imagine a lot of scenarios, and don't forget the space crime is one of the main problems because of this type of
Yep, that's a good example because we think that predictive maintenance, because its data is like secure, but actually it is not, right? And also something what we explain to launch this project was, it's not technical at the beginning. What you need to know actually is that how to mitigate. First, you need to understand the situations. And when we are talking about cybersecurity, people think about like geeks, people behind the computer, knowing how to settle a firewall or many things like that. But at the beginning, it's just about understanding what is happening and who have the role, or like the roles and responsibilities of each of the stakeholders, right? So this was something for us. It's just like we can't take actions because we lack knowledge. So the audit was really for us to say, okay, let's have an understanding. And what happened actually, which was really interesting, is like Tech ID helped us to identify the risks for our assets, right? So really high risk, low risk, medium risk, and low risk. And what was interesting to mitigate the risks is what actually, as we are using an operators, it was mainly legal. Like we had to improve our processes, improve our contracts, and to be sure that the responsibility is borne by the operators. But up to now, it was not the case. So, which means that if anything was happening on the assets, the Chinese government could come to us and say, from your contract, because you are the owners of the assets, you bear the responsibilities. And bearing responsibilities when you are messing with the grid means you can go to jail. Actually, we were just like, okay. It was, yeah, you want to say something?
No, just an example that may happen more likely to be objective by common people is just like if you are a luxury brand and you give your database to a marketing agency. The marketing agency will have has a huge database of all your customers, and then suddenly you are the responsible and you cannot attack the marketing agency because you did not do what was required to protect your respect. So that's
So yeah, so something again, what we got from this use case, and it was don't panic when you're talking about cybersecurity, and also you need to engage in a transversal way your departments. Not only responsibilities from cybersecurity and IT department, but mainly also from legal department, and also at the business level and so on. So yeah, we really love this graph. It's so fancy. But so first thing is knowledge. Then for us it was really governance. And doing the audit, it was really what we did as well is to engage in showing that it's everyone's responsibility. What happened to do for Engie to pay for a cybersecurity audit after buying the assets was not normal. We could have actually that the cost could have been borne by the sellers, right? And what happened is we got lucky. Tech ID is expensive, but that's okay. It's just that why we were lucky is that what we identified was easy to handle, easy to mitigate, but it could have been way worse, right? We could have identified like really high risk and then maybe have to pay for deploying a lot of like new networks, configurations, and so on. So something that also raised the awareness, and it was even at the BD level, when you're like dealing into that, you need to take this into consideration. And even it's when France is getting involved, or like Brazil or whoever we are working with at Engie, the cybersecurity can't be handled by just the experts. And so, yeah, really transversal responsibilities, and you don't have to get the answers. You just need to have a questions and go ask your experts. So if you have any doubt about like, oh, maybe I should do an audit, cybersecurity audit, or maybe I have a question like this partner is not, he doesn't want to provide any processes about cybersecurity or anything. What can I do? You don't have to get the answer. You just have to go and talk to us, right? Or talk to your department who are in charge. And this was really key because what we mentioned at the beginning is how you identify the issues, and sometimes you don't know. As we mentioned, so many department now are doing their own digitalizations, data evaluation, and so on. So people need to get to be aware of what is happening, and just then to feed back to the right departments. So yeah, basically we're reaching the end of the use case. So what we wanted for you to understand is like, first, don't panic. Like cybersecurity is a complex topic, and even especially in China, but you need to start from the basic. So understanding what is happening, getting the knowledge, having a clear pictures, and then setting up a governance and engage. So having trainings, having awareness within all for all the employees is really key. I will let Maxime dig into a bit deeper. What we mentioned about benefits is like you secure yourself, you secure your business, because if tomorrow if you would have been hacked before mitigate the risk for cybersecurity, you can also lose your license to exercise business, right, in China. So it means that you didn't comply to the cybersecurity law, and you jeopardize China's assets. And so they can just say, "Xixi, bye-bye," like just, "Thank you, we are closing your license." So this was for us a main key topic, and also fine. Because in China, the market is big, but NG on the market is not that big, and we have margin to take into considerations and benefits, right? So like, so when you have to pay a fine, sometimes you just also can just lose all the benefits you have accumulated over the years because it's really expensive. But please complete.
Yeah, so in addition to the use case benefit, there is more globally benefits. Of course, you will reduce, if not erase, the potential liabilities that you can face if you are being hacked. Being noted, and it's very important in the cybersecurity law, if you are a victim of a cyber attack, so you are the victim of the hacker, you will also be a victim for the government, because they will fine you. They will not come and say, "Oh, you have been hacked, I'm very sorry for you." No, you will have failed in your obligation of cybersecurity, and you will be deemed as not a victim, but criminal somehow, because you did not respect the cybersecurity law. So beyond those liabilities, and I think that's the main benefit I would like to highlight, cybersecurity is also an asset, an advantage, okay? I will take Bruno's system example. We were just talking over the coffee. His system is ISO 9001, and is one of the only software provider to have that type of license. And then we were mentioning about other type of certification. Well, basically, you are handling RFP, RFQ at your company. When you see two identical proposals and one has a certification, the other doesn't, and if you have cybersecurity in mind, then it becomes a better solution for you to take the one with cybersecurity. I think it's basic approach. But in any case, I don't have an example I could give for NG, but anytime when you have secured assets, for sure it's better. Now I will also mention Leaf, which is one of our partner law firm. One of the first cases we have done with Leaf is combining legal and cybersecurity around merge and acquisition. What for? Basically, Clémence mentioned a bit, but if you find out that a company has a very poor cybersecurity and you need 1-2 million to put it up to standards and regulations, of course you're going to negotiate the price of purchasing of that asset. We also faced one case where one customer wanted to purchase a company, and the database have been obtained by that company illegally over the years. So basically, the whole point of the transaction, which was the database, was unexploitable for the purchasing party because they cannot exploit it, or they bear the legal risk of exploiting that database. So cybersecurity, sure, it's a cost. Sure, it's it's not convenient to do, but it's really mandatory. It's not something. We live in a very connected world. It's impossible to just overlook at this. And never forget also that's the only purpose of cybersecurity somehow, not in the industrial part of the equation, but it's to protect data. And along the road, it's your personal data, but also your company data. So even us as person, we should raise our awareness about cybersecurity because it's good for all of us. And if it's good for you and you understand it, then it will benefit the company because the main real risk of a company in terms of cybersecurity is the awareness of its users. And the worst things to think at a company level is that someone will think about it. It must be a project driven by everyone. And therefore you will really lead benefit for your company. So the memo card. Okay, so here it's not really specific to industrial system because it's true for every type of activities and business. So the first thing is you need a compliance program across your company and main departments. That's very basic, actually. It's just you need to have standards about how to handle cybersecurity, how to raise up to the adequate level, etc. The second part, which may be less understood by most people, is you need a very strong vendor assessment process. As I mentioned, for the industrial systems, they used to be very highly secured because they were closed, but they were not closed because someone thought, why connect it to internet? No, they were closed for security purposes. And because we have seen it many times at some customer site, you integrate plug and play solution or even third-party vendors or third-party consultant, etc., you create a bridge. A vendor assessment process is very important because this is a third party that you let somehow in your company. So you have to assess them. And basically, what is the best moment to, evaluate their cybersecurity is when you are signing a contract, because signing a contract is somehow the top of your relation with your customer and your supplier. The customer loves your product. You want to work with that customer. So everyone is willing to make efforts and to make commitment and etc. So this is the right moment to address cybersecurity. When you have a vendor for 4 years and suddenly out of the blue you come and you said, we want to audit your product, it will be perceived somehow like a police control. They will not understand why suddenly you have this and you do that and etc. And they will feel being challenged by you. So of course, don't be afraid that because, it's something we hear sometimes, don't be afraid to engage in cybersecurity discussion with your supplier right from the beginning, because actually this is the best moment to do it. And that doesn't mean that everything will come out perfect from the first contract and first relationship, but at least they know that cybersecurity is important for you. And if 2 years later you tell them we want to make an audit for compliance perspective, they should understand it. So basically, this is company level, this is vendor level, and we have one last risk to address to have a holistic approach of cybersecurity at company level is your teams. It's the key aspect of every company. It's very difficult. It's a never-ending role, but everyone should feel involved into the cybersecurity. Of course, we don't ask them to be cybersecurity experts, but they must understand the principle of privacy and security at a global, at a high level, from a high level point of view. because they are basically the persons protecting your assets before any type of hackers. I will also just make one small sentence on that. Is there is many software that can protect you from malwares, but there is no software to protect you from human brain. So you can develop cybersecurity as much as you want. You will never find a software to control your employee. So the only way to do that is through education and awareness. So this is never ending. So this is basically from the prevention side, and then you have the control, because even you have prevention. Just it happened for NG assets purchase in the case study. You never know. You never know that there is not a glitch happen in your compliance program, that someone made a mistake, or one of your vendor did a change of his system without thinking about one point. So you need to have audits. You need to have audit on a regular basis. Actually, all the standards, ISO standards say you have to audit yourself every year, every 2 years, and etc. But you need to do it as well from a cybersecurity point of view. So audit your vendor, I mentioned it, but also cooperate with them. Specifically in Industry 4.0, you have absolutely not the same roadmap that your vendors. Okay. Basically, your vendors in the Industry 4.0, they will be looking for breakthrough and technology advance and etc. From an industrial point of view, when you deploy something, you are more looking for reliability, long-term plan and roadmap and etc. So cooperate with them. Of course, you are looking for breakthrough in terms of technology, but put it on paper, check out what could be the risk and etc. and be more engaged with your vendor. And the last one, which I briefly mentioned also, is you have to monitor risks. There is some technologies and software which allow it, but to be honest as well, in more cases where we do investigation and compliance program and etc., we can see that the system are in place, hardware are in place, but actually is just like I was going to say, it's just like the newsletter from the CCIFC. When you receive 3 in a row, you don't look the two last. So it's just like there is a risk monitoring problem, is that when you receive too many alerts, you start ignoring those alerts. So there is a work to be done on that part. It must be somehow smart, not too much, but it must be really taken into consideration. That's basically the 6 points you can check when you go back to your company or when you start a project with a vendor. If they are all checked, you're pretty safe. If some of them are not checked, it may be relevant. Because, for example, that's something you did not mention in the case study, but which is very interesting. We can say it? Can we say it? Yeah. The legal structure of the assets were empty. So basically, there is no one inside. It's a company just owning the panels, the solar panels. So basically, there is no compliance program on those legal entity because it's just a legal entity to own assets. So it can have some exception. You can have some specificities, but at least for each of those 6 points, you should find a justification if it's not met, if the criteria is not met, and otherwise you should take it very deeply into consideration.
And something to add, actually, that I didn't mention as well regarding the use case is that we have power plant in more like 30 provinces in China. So because I show a picture of one rooftop, actually the scope of the project is a bit bigger than that. And cybersecurity law is an overall law, right? But then you have local laws regarding cybersecurity and data. And so one thing also we need to do is to set up, what we did is to set up monitoring of these local laws, because we have plants in different provinces. So you can't just have a look at the cybersecurity law, which is really broad and kind of vague, and just to say, okay, I think I understand the risk. It's like you need to have this local monitoring and to understand really what are the specificities. And yeah, it's add a lot of complexity at the end of the day, right?
All right, so that's the Q&A session. Is there any question?
You were talking about different, I would say, severities in the legislation regarding cybersecurity laws in different provinces. Is there one province, I would say, that has like the strictest requirements, and your goal would be to target this one, for instance, I don't know, Beijing or Shanghai, and you know that if you are closer to meet Shanghai's requirements, then wherever you are in China, it would be okay? Or is there really a lot of difference between provinces?
Yeah, thank you for the questions. Really interesting ones. Indeed, Beijing regarding cybersecurity law is like really tough, and Shanghai as well. And what is interesting is like, because we have that in mind, maybe we are like super careful about what we are doing, and when that our plans over there are really secure. But actually, it's not where we got problems. And I said problems mean that cybersecurity law again is really broad and vague, right? It's like giving you a framework, but then the way you apply it can be you have your own interpretation, if I may say. And actually what we got is like in one province, which was not Shanghai, neither Beijing, local governments say, oh, actually you are not compliant to the local cybersecurity law. And it was, and we checked for Beijing and Shanghai, and actually we were compliant over there. And what happened is just like, it was really an interpretation in the law. But when local government is coming to you and say, actually, you need to upgrade your systems. Otherwise, the fine is, actually, it was multiple hundred of thousand of renminbi, right? And they say like, and actually, so either you pay the fine, or you upgrade your systems, and you need to take these vendors. And you don't have to choose, right? You can't even do that yourself. It's actually like, our vendor, we are sure that they will upgrade your system the way we want. And so then for sure it's super expensive, but it's less expensive than a fine, so you pay for that. And so it was not in Beijing, it was not in Shanghai, and we are actually handling more data, or we are like saying, let's say playing with data more in Shanghai and Beijing than in other provinces. In other provinces we collect and we identify, we collect and aggregate data, right? But it's not specific to the provinces. But whereas in Shanghai, for example, we understand what's really happening and doing proof of concept with Shanghai or Beijing. But yeah, we didn't get a problem with Shanghai or Beijing. We got a problem with other provinces that was not expected, actually. And then you're just like, oh, and it's not even cybersecurity law, it's like local cyber law, right? So you need to have like this first understanding the really the global framework of cybersecurity law, but then have a monitoring for any provinces where your assets are. And this is also piling up the complexity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. You did something very interesting in this presentation. I think is you avoided mentioning any specific system or technology. So you took this risk management approach, which I understand. But when actually it comes back to the topic of motivation for the clients, for the industrial company to get into such topics. Okay, how to motivate them, and actually the Chinese law mandates that companies should do a self-assessment on cybersecurity, data protection, and so on. It's mandated by law, which is the risk management approach you mentioned. You start by an assessment, either self-assessment or you use a third party or whatever. But I found that most people we talk to, they don't respond to that. They don't respond to this general risk management approach. Look, this is a high level view, and they don't feel it's like blah 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 blah. The law says self-assessment. Nobody told us. Nobody came to tell us. It's not that clear. It's vague, and they don't respond to that. it's the right approach when you coming from a risk management background. I mean, I deal with maintenance of this risk management, so I understand the approach. But many of my clients, they don't react to that. So self-assessment, we know what we have. Or it's like, blah 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 blah. What? How do you make, maybe especially you, Maxime, because you're selling your services somehow. How do you get those clients who are not already we don't already have a risk management approach? Let's say NG have this, being an energy company dealing with expensive assets, or being a large company, but a lot of medium-sized SMEs, industrial SMEs, they don't have this thinking. How do you get them into that? Not by talking about is that the way, or
so what we okay, there is three type basically of sell we can do at TechID, if I may say. So there is the risk management compliance approach that huge headquarters in Europe may like a bit or not fully implemented here, and then we help them to catch up with China. That's one point. More specifically on that part, there is a customer we can have right now and customer we will get later. Let me explain it. It's super simple. A company which does not do a self-assessment, we will see them 6 months later for a crisis management. Because when the government will come knock on their door, they will come see us because we will have tell them it was important. Now you may think, yeah, it happens very few, right? For people who are like unwilling to do self-assessment, let me tell you how it goes usually. We tell them it's very important, we educate them, and then basically they said, yes, but I have talked with my network and no one get nothing. Let me ask any one of you here, if you have been controlled by the government, would you say it? Would you communicate to your team? The answer is no. This is normal. You think there is no enforcement because no one wants to advertise on this. No one. If you get a control from even financial investigation, but cybersecurity investigation and so on, you will not communicate on it. So it's normal. So the way we also address it, we have few customers very close to us which are willing to talk openly of some investigation and controls they got from the government. So when we see there is a customer is like it doesn't happen, etc., we propose them to put them in contact with some of our customer which has been investigated by the governments. And then suddenly they do realize that actually they don't understand the problem properly and they don't address it properly. That's the first case, and most of the time we can convince people like this. Then the second case is eventually 6 months later they come back and we do business together. But that's the way it works actually. No one wants to talk about problems they may have had with authorities. So this is why there is a wrong implication that there is no control, there is no enforcement, and it's wrong. It's actually exists. And in addition to that, I will say two things. Is first, that the Chinese authorities has released a list of the controlled companies in China. There is 60,000 companies in China had either a business license revocation or huge fine as to the cybersecurity law. And I think in Shanghai, it's, I forgot, it's 3,000 or 6,000. No, it's more than that. I forgot, but there is a huge amount in Shanghai. This list is public. You can check it, but there is few people who knows it. And the second part that I will also mention is that in China, you have a website. You can go and you can actually delete people and companies and say, I know this company is doing illegal stuff in cybersecurity and stuff like that. If there is one person, the government is not going to go right away, but 2, 3, 4, 5, then it can go pretty fast. So sure, you can play. I think it's really not wise. And what we have also seen, it's a third part answer of my 3-part answer, is that there is a lack of communication. And sometimes when we started project, we understood that The cybersecurity law question was never addressed. And then when we started to dig, we found a department. We said, "Oh yeah, we did something," and we're just like, "What?" So what was the conclusion, and etc. And it's as Clémence mentioned, it's in silo. So basically, legal is going to do his own stuff, cybersecurity is own stuff, and they may not communicate with each other. So this is why sometimes some companies, they believe they have done nothing, and actually they have. Depends to who you are talking to as well in the company. But actually there is many companies have already done things, at least internally. They have sent people to cybersecurity law conferences, and they have downloaded the guide on internet and tried to do by themselves. At least it's something. Companies which really said cybersecurity law, I don't care. I don't think there is very, very few, I think. Now that has not done the proper actions, that's a different topic.
Maybe just to add something on that, I think it's also what we wanted to show today. It's like, it seems scary, right? It seems complex, it seems scary. And when you just start from the beginning, and you can start small and understanding. So for these kind of companies, and it was also the case in NG, because NG is huge globally, but we are small in China. And so, and we want to focus on business, and we have limited resources, even if we have a lot of backups from the headquarters. So one thing is just to say, okay, it's not going to be complex, and we will not take a huge amount of time from everybody. But what we need to understand is what's happening. And maybe it will be, and also because what you mentioned is like, if the government you need to be able to show that you did the audit. So just, I think, if you are willing to promote this internally, to explain, like to have kind of the memo card Maxime showed was, okay, it doesn't have to be complex, and it doesn't have to be technical at the beginning, but just we need the knowledge. And because from that, then we can start monitoring, we know, and we don't have to deal with everything. What we did after the audit, just like, okay, we have 3 high risks. Okay, but we're gonna tackle that. Because then you do your matrix risks, right? So okay, do I want to take care of that? Do I want to take care of this one or that one? And we say, okay, what we want to tackle, and with the resources that we have and the priorities that we want to settle, it's just actually to take care of the high risks. And then we know we have medium and low risks, and we don't care. We don't care, okay. We know it's there, but for now, it's not a priority. So it's also, I think, just to say, okay, you go step by step, and it doesn't have to be complex, especially if you work with experts that knows the local ecosystem. And then, yeah, and it doesn't have to be costly as well, because you don't have to do all the IT system and infrastructure all over again. Sometimes it's just what we mentioned. You just have to just do your contract, renew your contract, or do something like that. So yeah, so that would be part of the answer if you want to convince your SMEs to do that.
Sorry, what was that? Yeah.
Are you co-sharing the responsibility?
So, okay, I do understand the question. Straight answer, no, we don't. But I can explain why. It's quite simple, because first, we are not a regulator. So we don't know, and as Clémence said, we don't know how local authorities are going to enforce this and enforce that, and etc. Second, when we deliver a report at instant T, I can guarantee at instant T. I cannot guarantee even 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 months after. Especially in China, regulations are changing very fast. But it would be the same in France, in Europe, and etc. It would be the same pretty much everywhere. And more importantly, I do not know what the customer is going to actually implement and how he's going to implement it, and etc. Except he also rely on us. I mean, it's very difficult and very tricky question. So you can understand that we don't take the risks. There is too many unknowns. So I understand the question. I would say if you really want to be covered, then you should think more about the cyber security insurance, which can cover such legal risk in terms of investigation and etc. But you will never find a firm of any type, even the Big Four, which will bear the responsibility of the report. However, what I can also share with you is that TechID's reports are shared to authorities throughout the investigation of the authorities, or when one of our customers want to do what is called the MLPS certification, then all reports is part of the documentation frameworks they have to provide to authorities.
Any other question in the room or even online? Yeah, I see exactly.
As part of all this discussion, I mean, the China cybersecurity law is more than cybersecurity, it's the personal data protection, and it has a lot to do with national security. And that's what creates the vagueness. How some people are confused because there's actually more than cybersecurity. So the risk management approach and address that which is good. I see a trend, which is the other trend, the trend of the decoupling between China and the West, or whatever is going on, the geopolitics of all this, which we have seen in the past 1 year. And it's probably getting worse. I saw the French military is doing something in South China Sea. I don't know if you've seen the news. It's going to get worse anyway, the decoupling. So as a result, I see some of my European clients. It's a minority of my customers. Mostly I'm dealing with Chinese companies, so that there's no problem. But European clients trying to actually move some systems back to Europe, or some of our systems, or some kind of industrial management systems, not for the SCADA, but more like management type of systems. They say, well, we'll regroup the systems in Europe, because the motivation is usually kind of cost optimization, whatever. We have a big data center in Europe, we put them together, globalization, blah, blah, blah. But I sense, maybe it's not always expressed, it has been in a couple of times, it's like, well, we better, considering the international situation, we better bring a system back in Europe, which will be used by the plant in China. And it seems to be that they according to the Chinese regulation, it actually says that some of the data has to stay in China. But there's a gray area. Most of these companies are telling me, well, we are not dealing with national security. It's not energy. It's not infrastructure. It's not personal data of consumers. It's not. My clients are industrial clients. It's plant data. And it's a kind of gray area. So they feel it's okay to move it back. Not to mention the connection issues. Okay, there are also interconnection issues. That's something else. It will be slow, and it might be disconnected. But more from a legal standpoint, what do you see that trend of actually companies moving stuff back to Europe, which is kind of it contradicts what is actually the legal trend? Did you see that, and how would you think we should address this because they actually increase the risk. I mean, it could get hit very hard if some of the data happen to be sensitive. And well, in my systems, it's like regulatory checks on certain system pressure vessels, for example. There's regulatory checks that you have to do internally, and the data is in our system. So it's kind of not very sensitive, but is regulated. That's an example. Another example is a layout or a technical structure of a chemical plant, which actually presents a safety risk for the population around the plant. So if there's a problem or an audit, I mean, the data that could serve to prove that you have done everything right is outside of China in this case. That's the kind of data we're talking about. How do you see that? Was that part of your assessment that you did in NG, that maybe some systems, some data was outside of China? How do you feel?
I'm going to try to get short in the answers because we are running out of time, but thank you so much. It's another part of my job is to do transborder data with energy data, sensitive data. And it's what you mentioned is just like for multinational companies. we have a lot of platforms in the cloud to operate our assets or to even do the data science, right? The point is to have resources to work together and not to create from scratch everything. It's costly, it's time consuming, it's everything. So I think the first answer is like, again, you need to understand what you're dealing with. So the point is like, people freaked out when we are talking about transborder data, but it's not impossible. What you need to know is what is happening, what is your data. So it's what we did, right? It's like, we are dealing with energy data, it's sensitive data. We are identified as CIIO in France. CIIO stands for, so yeah, thank you. So it's even like you're really on the spotlights of the governments, right? But we did okay. These people are telling us that, but we don't know because we didn't ask a legal firm to support us and to categorize the data sets per sensitivity. So what we did is just like, bye-bye tech ID, hello legal company. But just to say, it's another topic, but you need to work with experts who have the answers. So for sure, you don't have to be bold and say, oh, it's decoupling and we are a French company or US company or whatsoever, and we're gonna take the data back to where it belongs. So first things, most of the time, you need to host the data in China. You host the data here. This is sure. Then you can send them abroad, right? You can do transborder data, but you host your data here. And but because this is not a gray area. This is mandatory. You can't host your data like somewhere else. The only data that we are hosting that is not based in China are actually our own like office data, right? But this is not our industrial assets. All our industrial assets has to be hosted in China. And then what we identify and what we did is to say, what I discussed before is like the data inventory, right? Data inventory is like, if I simplify, you have an Excel files and with all your data sets. And for each data set, you say like, okay, what is the Chinese cybersecurity law saying? Or the data privacy law saying? It's like, is that highly sensitive, medium sensitive, or low risk? For highly sensitive, no way you can transfer your data abroad. Medium, maybe gray area. Low, okay, we can go. And again, what you're doing here is if the government comes to talk to you, you just say, hey guys, I did the audit. And at the time I did the audit, and even if I'm monitoring, it was okay. And we just didn't took the decision by ourselves. Didn't take the decision by ourselves. What we did is we asked experts in the room, right? So I think it's, hearing that, I'm just like, okay, they do whatever they want, but they are not compliant. And also they need to know what they're dealing with. If that answer your questions a bit?
So hosting in China is mandatory for Chinese data. Chinese data so it's basically data you collect, produce, generate, consolidate in China. There is a definition and that can be discussed, but it's basically your Chinese data must be hosted in China, mandatory, no derogation, no bypassing situation. Cross-border data transfer, no. Say no. Then you see case by case, but it's really, really tricky. Yes, you can in some circumstances do cross-border data transfer, but it's touchy. It's not just like, I have evaluated, it's good. Then you do that, you're gonna have troubles. So yes, you can do cross-border data transfer in reality, but you have to be very careful because by default it is no. And when you can, you have to actually make what is called a cross-border data transfer self-assessment, which is an evaluation of the data, saying what type of data and the justification of why you send it. Because even it's low data, I mean, somehow useless data, and you send it offshore just to send it offshore, then you will be non-compliant with the law. You have to justify why you send it offshore. It cannot just be for fun. So you need to find a justification. So that's the first part of my answer. The second part of your question, which is about the decoupling, we see actually the complete opposite. And I think that actually we see the same things, but from two different perspectives, because we see some customer, they had somehow data, a cluster of data, and they put back some of their system back in Europe. But actually sometimes to implement new system only for China. And this is what we have seen at some of our customer site, that they actually stop to have centralized management of their system, and they start to make individual instances per region. And this is what we see with China, because when dealing with cross-border data transfer, if you are a PME, a small medium business company, it's fine. When you're a company like NG, SAP, whatever, that start to be a full-time job. I mean, full-time job. It's huge, because data sets in a company, they are alive. I mean, today you collect this, tomorrow you collect something else, and next week you have the CEO come to you and say, I want this type of data, and etc. It's very difficult to maintain. So they start to put local system here.
One thing as well, which is really interesting to watch, Beijing government is settling up a channel between Europe and China, actually with specific partners to say, okay, we are gonna like kind of ignore the Great Firewall, and we're just gonna support you by transferring your data, because we understand that when you are able to do that, you can improve more easily your operation, your maintenance, or many things. So it's one thing is like, yes, we're gonna still host our data here, but it's not also the Chinese government is, at least Beijing, it's very specific to Beijing, is considering to say like, actually we want to set up something really controlled, like we pick up partners and to allow you to send some specific data sets abroad and with no constraints. So which is also interesting. So for right now it's a proof of concept, and we are applying to be part of this. And then it will be super easy, right? So they are also like they're trying to open a bit, but for sure it will never be global. But there is also these trends. So to say like, yeah, from the law is no way, but Beijing is settling up these channels to like overcome that. So it's really important. And one thing also that Maxime mentioned is like, as soon as you start sending data abroad, you need a strong monitoring for each data set to be sure that the regulation is not evolving. It's not, oh, I did the audit like 6 months ago or 1 month ago and I'm good to go. So what you mentioned is like full-time job, and you need to watch that. So, but it's happening. We set up entities to connect to our global cloud because our algorithms and a lot of analytics tools are in the cloud, and so it's cost efficient for us. And but yes, we know also the risks, and you need to take that into consideration. I think right.
Coming on, just to follow on this.
In terms of data center, what I can for sure say is that we have many customers now that are purchasing cloud servers, Chinese cloud servers. And we have even customers that now are creating companies in China to be capable to get a server. Because we mentioned about the vendor assessment, I got some customers were unhappy with me because when we audited their another customer, we told them you have to do a good vendor assessment, and they put it in place. But actually, the suppliers of our customers were also our customers, and they said, "Thank you, TechID, but now we have to be compliant as well." So, meaning that before we had customers, they were operating from Hong Kong, from Singapore, from wherever, and they were just because they did not have a huge customer pool in China, they were doing it from offshore. now are setting up businesses to open data centers here and actually perform legally here. So yeah, I can really see that increasing of Chinese cloud purchases. I don't know if you have more information on data centers opening. I don't think there is much more, but just Alibaba by itself is already big enough to host half the planet. But then you have, however, you can see the strong trends of Amazon and Microsoft to be here. In China, it's more working for Microsoft than Amazon, but it's a strong move. It's a very strong move. And even Apple, I'm not sure a lot of people actually know, but Apple, like 2 years ago, they have been asked by the government to put their data center in China, in Guangzhou to be specifically. And they were absolutely not happy about that decision because Apple is Apple. They want 100% control of their infrastructure. But they did it because China is a market they cannot ignore. And it was either they do it or they just forget about China.
And one last thing is really like the government is pushing, right? So in 2 weeks, we're going to have the 5-year plans. And what we are seeing is just like Chinese governments wants to be digitalized everywhere. They want to control, they want to have the data, they want to know what is happening and where. And so promoting that, promoting digitalization, promoting the use of new technologies, specifically AI in China, you're creating a lot of data. And so you need to store them and to be compliant. So I think this is also part of the topic is really pushed by the government as well, this digitalization. Yeah. I think we are like, yeah, kind of running out of time.
Yes. Thank you.
So just to close the meeting, I think thanks Clémence, Maxime. We'll do a similar event in Beijing a few weeks later. This working group continues, so we always welcome ideas for topics for future working groups, so don't hesitate. And I think the presentation can be shared, perhaps, or at least part of it. So I think maybe through the chamber, this will be you'll get a link for the presentation. You can contact our speakers, of course. I think especially Maxime, if you want to hire Tech ID services. That's it. Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.